going on YouTube? It's your boy Flycab back with episode 2 of Coffee and ARAM. You'll notice in the upper left hand corner you can see me hanging out there dealing with my panda hat and just having a grand old time. And the background music for this particular episode I believe to be a Final Fantasy X piano soundtrack or something like that. So you could say I'm following in the veins of Scara and the likes who like to listen to more relaxing music when they play. Just typically I think that it kind of helps you focus a bit more. So did not have my audio on for my webcam because there's some people doing some housework around us and stuff like that. So you're just going to be able to see me there and then obviously hear me talking over it. So for Coffee and ARAM episode 2, what I wanted to kind of discuss, there's a couple things. I know in the first episode I said I didn't want this to be all about ARAM mechanics, but there are some pretty interesting things that you can kind of take away from ARAM or some strategies that you should typically employ when you're playing this game mode. So first and foremost among those, general rules for ARAM, you cannot actually regain health at all by going back to the fountain. You can't back to buy items. And you can also, you also have lower summoner spell cooldowns, faster regen for your health and for your mana, and a couple other things like that, including the snowball summoner spell, which lets you mark something by pressing it once and then zipping to that location by pressing it again if it hits an enemy or an enemy champion. So there's a lot of opportunities here, and generally speaking, you want to take something like Clarity. You saw a couple of people on our team taking that because it does allow you to help out your team. Since there's 5 of you and you're constantly team fighting, you're going to be spamming a lot of spells. Fancy feat right there to get around that sphere. But also what you want to be doing constantly in ARAM is to be moving in unpredictable ways. You don't want to make it easy for the enemy team to hit skill shots, and you also want to try to take advantage of the limited terrain that you have. So, for example, like these brushes on the left-hand side of the lane over here, if you have someone like Gangplank, which the enemy team does, or Fiddlesticks or anything like that, it's actually really important for you to kind of secure those. Hold on one sec. Sorry about that. But yeah, it is really important for you to secure those and moving forward. So Malphite right there is getting executed. That's another thing that I wanted to kind of just bring attention to. When you get executed in ARAM, it's probably the best possible scenario that you can get, just because it actually does not give the enemy team any gold for killing you, and you still get to die and take the free shots, as we like to say. So since, like I said before, you can't actually back, you want to look for opportune times to die, which is weird to say, but also opportune times for when it won't actually hurt your team that much if you get off of the map for a bit. So, as a general rule of thumb, if you're incredibly low HP and mana in ARAM and you're not going to be able to contribute anything in a fight anyway, there's absolutely no point in you just staying alive and trying to build up your kill streak in your KDA or anything like that. It's actually super selfish and it's not going to win you the game at all, because the only way that you get stronger in this game is actually by dying, so it's kind of weird. Now, of course, ideally you want to just execute whenever possible for that, but if you cannot, like I said, look for opportunities to when you're low health to just kind of get some chip damage and then die and go ahead and back, especially before key items. So that's really good. Another note, I generally speaking like to play ADCs or mages in ARAM, but that's not to say that tanks aren't valuable. They're actually incredibly valuable, and just like in normal 5-on-5 game modes, there are breakpoints for all the champions in ARAM. And there are times when they have, their peaks and their crests, their really strong moments of the game, and others where they start to fall off. So ADCs, for example, depending on which ones you have and which high damage dealing mages you have, the early portions of the game are actually really important for you, because if you're unable to break 1 or 2 towers to get that gold lead or get a lot of poke damage down into kills, then once the tanks, if the tanks exist on the other team, start to get a few items, it's actually really difficult for you to do anything. Especially if you don't have a front line. So for example, one of these, like in this game, we have a Malphite. Now the other team has no tank champions really. They have a Deceptive tank in Lulu, and they do have the Black Shield from Morgana. And so they have a little bit of sustain and a little bit of blocking of damage, but they don't actually have any tank front line. So what that means is that with Fiora and Malphite, they can just jump on top of them with the Sivir ult and just theoretically take them out. So you'll notice me putting in the chat here, let's fight or engage, because we're all level 6, and we have Sivir and Malphite. So they literally just need to press their ultimate and run in, and we will win the fight. I don't understand why they're being so pensive and apprehensive about it, but they really just need to go in. So yeah, another philosophy, since we were talking about how you can't really chop unless you die or anything like that, what you can do if the other team is being little stingy bitches like that and choosing to not die because they want to protect their KDA, just poke them down and push them back and just take towers over and over again. Push them under tower when they're weak. They're not going to fight. Hit the tower, rinse, repeat, push the wave in again, do it again. Because if they're going to stay weak like that and never die, they're literally going to offer nothing up in a team fight ever. And so when it eventually does happen and you ace, if you're pushed far enough up on the map, you can just go ahead and win right there. Morgana comes in. I'm going to flash out immediately just because I don't want to deal with it or be stunned up. So Gangplank all comes in as well. But we're going to go ahead and get some pretty decent kills right there. And you'll notice the Lulu is full health. It's probably good that she stayed alive there for the other team just because she's able to clear wave with her Q pretty easily. And Nidalee staying alive, however, pretty funny. Look at this TF in the backside, trying to do amazing things. I didn't even realize he went that ham, and since we don't have the wave pushed up, there's not really anything that I can do there. We could have, pushed up, as the Sivir gets a really nice execute right there. We could have pushed up, but us dying right there after we just clear doesn't actually make too much sense for us unless we just want to completely reset the map. So me dying right there, not the end of the world. I have some decent money to spend, but ideally I would have liked to stay alive as I am our wave clear. But I'm going to go ahead and pick up the third version of the Hex Tech core here and then go into Morello's. I generally speaking like to go a lot of mana regen, cooldown reduction, and magic 10 when I play mages in ARAM. For some reason, people never build Aegis, so you can, generally speaking, just kind of melt people, especially on this team. Look at all the squishies. I mean, you can see one Sivir W doing all that damage right there. So, and really nice spell shield. Our Sivir is actually carrying pretty hard this game. But it is, yeah, a little bit weirder than a typical 5-on-5 game. Having a lot of deaths in an ARAM game, while it's not going to earn you an S, and you're not going to get a fantastic report card necessarily at the end of the game, it's actually not the end of the world because you need to be shopping, as we said before. So don't be afraid to die in ARAM. Don't be afraid to put your life on the line to save your teammates or anything like that. And also, it might be a worthwhile investment initially to just go with a refillable potion if you don't have the Biscuit Mastery set up. And the reason I say that is because you're probably going to be buying potions pretty often in this game mode, at least initially. And so if you want to save that money and just spend 150 gold initially, it might be better to do the refillable. One other thing too, the health packs offer you a lot of potential for outplay, and they spawn on the right side of the lane over here, and they're on 1 minute cooldown timers. So you can kind of use that to your advantage, actually, if you time that and you want to get into a little bit of engages, or if you're low and then you flash onto a health pack to gain some health back and then turn around to fight. So there's a lot of options right there. What I did want to talk about too, we have the Gauntlet, or the, I've dubbed the Gauntlet happening this weekend. So there's going to be a lot of LCS matches. This morning was actually Giants versus UOL, and I don't know the result of that just yet. But should be a pretty interesting series nonetheless. I don't think that either of those teams is necessarily strong enough to really do well at Worlds, barring any sort of weird boot camps or anything like that that they can kind of bust out in the meantime before Worlds. I don't really think the EU has much of a chance. G2 is a decent team, but their playstyle is, in my opinion, fairly predictable in the sense that they rely very heavily on their bot lane to be even and not behind. When their bot lane is behind, they're still impactful, but they're not the same playmaking duo that you would expect. The other thing I think the key to taking down G2, just because interesting topic, so let's kind of dissect it. The key to taking down G2, if you look at their past games in the finals for EU Summer Split, you're looking at Mithy on relatively large playmakers, and especially his Tom Kent, which allows him to be a little bit more mobile around the map, and also to save people, is really, really good. And the thing about Tom Kent, too, is that it's a very strong pick right now because it counters the strong ADCs of the day. So what's really strong right now for ADCs, at least in my opinion, and from what I've seen in professional play, you're looking at Jhin for his long-range engage and generally safe and strong laning phase. And you're looking at Ashe for two of the same reasons, kind of global-ish ultimate from Jhin, a global ultimate from Ashe, so she can be impactful even from bot lane. Or if you swap the bot lane to the top, she can be impactful in dragon fights even with her arrow, possibly. So those two are very strong. And you're also seeing a bit of a resurgence of some things like Twitch and Kog'Maw, just here and there. And Sivir, obviously, is a very strong pick as well because she offers you a very good late-game composition. Once Sivir gets 3 or 4 items, she just destroys. Speaking of destroy, that wombo right there is exactly why I've been saying the whole game that our team just needs to press R. But they're going to go ahead and not do it except when they feel like it, I guess. So because of that, we're just now pushing up to take the tower. But I think the key to taking down G2 is going to rely on Spin and Mithy. I don't think that Spin necessarily has a low champion pool. He's been shown to be pretty decent on a lot of different types of AD carries. But I do think that if you take away maybe a couple of Mithy supports and push him onto range supports, I don't think that his Karma or his Nami or any of his other like range supports like that are as strong as his Kent or his Rom or other supports of that nature, more engaged heavy supports. So I think that that would probably be the key there. And they're the best looking bet for EU to do anything at World. So not too much hope there in my opinion. I thought that last split, EU was actually showing itself to be somewhat of a stronger region than NA. NA's last split just didn't really know what they were doing. And then CLG, of course, at MSI had a pretty decent showing. And the rest of the world was kind of like, oh, maybe NA is a decent region. And this split in particular with Immortals and with TSM, and even in some cases with Cloud9, we're seeing that I think the NA can perform relatively well at Worlds this year. Now, do I think they're going to win Worlds? No, I don't. But I do think that they can make it into semifinals. And I think a semifinals between something like TSM and SKT or TSM and Rocks, something like Rock Tigers, something like that could be really cool. Now, once again, we have 2 international wildcard teams going to be going over to Worlds, and so far right now we know for sure that that is going to be Albus Nox Luna, which I actually am not sure which region they're from. They're in the international wildcard tournament. I hadn't heard much of them before. And then Lion Gaming from Latin America North region, and I believe there might be another team from Brazil that will be there if they do well in the gauntlet. And the thing about the international wildcard teams is, like, yes, they are good, of course, for their region, and of course they're very talented players, but they're almost set up to fail in a way because they don't practice on a server that I don't feel like their servers would be nearly as competitive. Now, that could be entirely false. I don't have anything to substantiate that claim, but I just feel like that region wouldn't have as strong of a competitive server at the challenger level as NA, Korea, China, or anything like that. And I also feel like they don't ever get to scrim against top teams from other regions necessarily until right before Worlds, and they're not consistently playing against the same level of competition that the other regions are. So it's really hard for them to come in like that and be expected to perform incredibly well at Worlds, which is why it was kind of a big deal when Kaboom actually won a game, last Worlds, when they actually took a game off of, I can't remember who it was, Origin, Alliance, something like that. It might have actually been a while ago this happened. Maybe it was 2 Worlds ago. But the point of it being that the international wildcard teams are set up, in my opinion, for failure at World events. Now, of course, it's really cool to see them, and I think it's great that they even have an opportunity to go. That's really awesome. But for them to do, anything beyond group stages is going to be pretty incredible if it happens, and I hope it does just to shake things up, but my head is telling me that it will not. So, LCK region last night, and I didn't get a chance to fully watch the series. I know it went to Game 5. Samsung Galaxy did take on KT, and the first game of the series was actually pretty interesting because KT ended up doing an invade at the start of the game, which cost Ambition, Samsung Galaxy's jungler, quite a bit of farm and a few levels of experience. And the other jungler for KT, Spore, proceeded to kind of counter jungle him and be all over the map in the early stages of the game, and it looked like Gragas, which is who Ambition was playing on Samsung, was not going to have any impact on the game. And yet, KT went on to lose that game to Samsung Galaxy. I believe 20-2 was the kill score, and just a fantastic gold lead and recovery that happened from Samsung. So that was the only game that I was able to see, but now I do know that it went to Game 5, just based on the uploads on YouTube. So pretty interesting series there. I think that the Korean region, as usual, is very strong going into Worlds. I think it's still the strongest region, but that gap is closing. But what I would like to say is when looking at the LPL, especially this split, I haven't been very impressed with them. Now, EDG, of course, is a very, very strong team. And they won in the finals recently in the LPL. Excuse me. And so they're going to be at Worlds, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. But what I feel like inevitably happens is the Chinese region seems very strong because, in a way, their gameplay style is a little bit more Fiesta-ish in that, like, they kind of just, go ham all the time and hope that it works out, and they hope that, even when you watch solo queue from the LPL and the LCK, it's just much more aggressive not necessarily in a reckless way, but it tends to be very snowbally. And when you play against regions like NA and EU, which tend to have more macro-oriented play, and they're more reliant on, you know, kind of team play and like pushing waves and wave management, those kinds of things, dragon control, I do think that the LPL might suffer a bit there. Where they're going to make up for that is in their winning lane, win game philosophy, and with their team fighting skirmishing and global team fighting composition. So looking forward, of course it's hard to say because Worlds is still a far way away, but I think what you are going to see is a lot of Talia at Worlds because of the globals. I do think that you're going to see more Twisted Fate. We've seen a couple people start to play TF again. I think Mickey from Africa Freak was a pretty good example of that. And although they did lose to Samsung Galaxy, if I remember correctly, it's still, I believe, a strong pick to kind of make an impact on the map around you. So that's my general thoughts on the state right now of everything going into this weekend. Now we have a lot of games this weekend, and hopefully we'll have a little more information about what Worlds is going to look like. Well, not hopefully, we will have more information about what Worlds is going to look like going forward. So really cool things there, and on the next episode of ARAM, Coffee and ARAM, I will of course be dissecting a bit more. But as you can see here, we're pushed up towards the end of the game. We only got a couple minutes left here, and that spear just so much damage in ARAM. More so than in normal 5v5 mode, you're definitely going to realize if you start playing a lot of ARAM that there are certain champions that are just really badly designed, at least for this mode. And no, I don't think Nidalee is one of them. You know, her skill is really actually difficult to hit. It might be one of the hardest skill shots to hit in the game if you take out her kit, just looking at the skill shot alone, because it is such a small width, and it's incredibly difficult. So that is possible. You just destroyed us all. But some champions like that I mean are like people like Yorick, who you might say, oh, that's ridiculous, he's getting reworked, how can he be strong in ARAM? He is incredibly strong in ARAM. Other people that are really strong in ARAM, people like Vladamir, constant health sustain. Now, here's my thing, I actually hate Vladamir as a champion, and I don't understand his champion design or the way that he works at all. And the reason I say that is because you give him a potential for an infinite amount of lifesteal, okay? Also on a resourceless champion. He doesn't run out of mana, so he doesn't ever run out of lifesteal. I get that he's supposed to be some sort of vampire or something like that, and so that might go into like the philosophy of what his character or champion is supposed to be, but quite frankly, that's really stupid. Also, it should never be the case, in my opinion, that a champion who's meant to be a damage dealer is able to build full tank for the first two items and still be incredibly impactful in these fights without hard CC. What do I mean by that? Look at Vladamir in a lot of competitive play, okay? What he'll do many times is he will go Lucidity Boots or some sort of boot into Spirit Visage to double all of the healing that he receives, which on his kit alone is pretty ridiculous. If you look at other healers and the situations they're in to get Spirit Visage, it's impossible because it's people like Soraka, Sona, Nami, these people who, yes, they have healing. Bard, all of their healing effects would be fantastic. Donna, but like they're support champions, and their priority falls onto Locket of the Iron Solari, Frozen Heart or Randuin's, okay? So those are the two items to deal with AP and AD, respectively, for the other teams, and then a Ruby Sidestone or some sort of Sidestone item. And that's pretty much what a support will get for almost the entire game, most of the time, unless it's incredibly late. So they don't get an opportunity to build Spirit Visage, this item that just is completely broken on someone like has infinite life steal already. Or Spirit Visage on Garen is really OP, but I don't think Garen is really a troubled champion as much as Vladimir is. Quite frankly, yeah, like I said, I just don't really understand what they were thinking with his design, and you should not be able to build full tank as a damage dealer and get away with it. It's like before they nerfed Iceborne Gauntlet a couple patches back, you were pretty much able to build Iceborne Gauntlet and Sunfire Cape on every single top laner, even a lot of mid laners, no matter what, and get away with it. There was quite a few games in ARAM where I was playing people like Lysandra or people like, Cassidon, and I would go Frozen or Iceborne Gauntlet into Sunfire Cape and just wreck. Even a full tank as those damage dealers, and that's before they nerfed the item. Now, that's not the issue with Vladimir. The issue with Vladimir is the kit in combination with the item. So, we'll see. Yeah, sorry, I just realized I ranted quite a bit about Vladimir, but I actually think that champion is really stupid. So if you play Vladimir, props to you for picking a champion like that, you dirty Vlad players, and hopefully you can learn a thing or two from this discussion. Pushing up here to end the game, you know, I am of course drinking coffee, and I will be drinking coffee again in the next game. Today's coffee comes to you from Starbucks. It is a iced large coffee with sweetener and room for cream. And quite frankly, it's fucking delicious because it's hot out, and you know you need something refreshing. Not trying to have another cup of hot coffee here and get myself all sweaty before I watch some LCS. Pretty interesting right here. So we're gonna go ahead and take out that tower. One thing I will say is when you get a chance to, definitely get chip damage on towers and ARAM as much as you can, because that is how you will eventually win. So we're gonna go ahead and close it out here. I want to say thank you to everyone for watching episode 2 of Coffee and ARAM, and hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. Until next time, it's been your boy Flagcap, and I will catch you later.